United States of America, Roswell, 1954. President Dwight D. Eisenhower established contact with a race of Nordic aliens known only as the Tall Whites. Flowing white hair, prominent cheekbones, and bright blue eyes. Smelling of Aryans. And otherwise to be known as the source of Jesus Christ. They had come bearing gifts for the Americans. Technology beyond our wildest imagination that would push us into the 21st century, the digital age, and the promise for so much more. All under one condition: spiritual technology and technological enlightenment for the eradication of the world's stockpile of nuclear arms. Eisenhower, a military bread and butter through and through, politely declined, paranoid to leave the nation and the world vulnerable to nuclear attack. It is in this moment, some believe, that in exchange for certain technologies, Eisenhower agreed to allow human abductions for the purpose of research and experimentation. But as the Tall Whites would board the ship, they would pose just one simple warning. Beware the Greys.
You coulda had a bad bitch, not the middle. Help you with your career, just a little. You're supposed to hold me down, but you're holding me back, and that's a sound. I mean, I'm calling you back.
You smell that? Summer is winding to a close and all the shitty kids are being packed up into their underfunded shitty classrooms, and thank God, finally they'll leave me the fuck alone. Betty and Barney Hill were a homely, humble little married couple. They had a nice little, not really a family together because they came from two separate marriages, two previous marriages. They both had their own kids from whatever, blah, 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 bullshit. Life happens and you don't end up staying together with the person you love. Boo-hoo! Fairy tales don't fucking exist. Don't ever, listen, take some fucking advice. Don't ever wayside your life for somebody else. If you are unhappy, fucking fix it. Do something to change your life and make yourself happy. Make yourself happy first. First and foremost. I'm spitting so much. Betty was a social worker and Barney was your friendly neighborhood postal worker. They would get married in May of 1960. They would reside in two different states for the first 10 months of their marriage because of shitty jobs, basically. But eventually Barney would be able to make the transfer to Boston, allowing him to move to New Hampshire. Granted, he was taking on a shitty graveyard shift and a fucking 4-hour commute, but it was worth it because Betty really knew how to rub the chub. It's funny because I feel like I'm a red fucking pig. It's funny because originally Betty had stated that she had no romantic interest in Barney whatsoever, but Barney, being a strapping and nice African-American gentleman, swayed that opinion through time. He eventually, when he got divorced, he said, "Hey, why don't you just give me a shot?" Proving that the friend zone doesn't exist. It's a stupid, made-up, quasi-dimension that just means you aren't fucking likable. Do something about your life that makes you interesting. But one day in Barney's excruciating commute, he had an idea. He had a fucking little light bulb that popped up in his head that said, "Man, I'm a little depressed. I'd really like to celebrate my marriage with my beautiful woman. Let's just take a weekend, just take a week. We'll have some time. We'll take a little road trip up to Niagara Falls. We'll do all this fun stuff. That sounds like a good plan." So then he'd go to work and be like, "Hey, yo, boss, give me some time off." And he'd be like, "Well, I guess I ain't got nobody to cover you." And he said, "Hey, fuck you, because I'm still fucking going. Oh, Barney, I'll see you in a couple weeks. Oh, you're such a good man." What? So Barney would go home and tell Betty, "Hey, finally, let's go on a trip." And they pool all the money that they had, which was about $70, which in based on inflation in 1961 money, $70 is like almost $600. It's like $582. That's a decent chunk of change to have a weekend full of fun and frights. So on Sunday the 17th, They would pack up all their shit. Barney would take his their pistol for safety or whatever, just in case something happened. And they'd also take their little dog Delcy. It'd be a nice, lovely family vacation, a little nice little weekend getaway. Fast forward a little bit, let's go through all boring bullshit. They're on their way back the night of the 19th. It's like the middle of the night. They're driving. They're just getting back into New Hampshire. They're cruising down Highway 93 when suddenly Betty sees a little something zooming in the sky. So they pull out their trusty pair of binoculars, which I didn't realize. I guess when I was a little child, I remember my grandmother's boyfriend, his name is Frank. He came home with this like extremely expensive pair of binoculars. And like thinking about it now, why the fuck do people have a pair of binoculars? It seems really it seems like an antiquated piece of technology. I mean, I understand you want to see shit from far away, but why? Like, what's the point? Is my dumb millennial brain just not understanding the need to want to see things up close? Like, I understand getting like a fucking telescope and looking into space and shit, but binoculars just allows you to see something that's like at the end of your street, just a little bit better. It's just a little too close for me to not give a shit. She originally thought it was a shooting star or a satellite, but then she started noticing it's all zipping all around, going all over the fucking place. And she's like, hey, Barney, what the fuck is that? And I'm like, oh, don't worry about it. It's just your nerves. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. He's like, but Barney, please. I need you to look at this. It's this crazy thing. It's starting to get closer. And Barney would be like, oh, shut the fuck up, you stupid women. I'm trying to drive. It's like 11 o'clock at night. It's fucking late. There's nothing there. But eventually Barney would stop and he'd put the fucking binoculars deep into his eye sockets and he'd see this fucking light just start descending quickly towards them, which would cause him to fucking reel out in panic and start taking off as fast as he fucking can. Oh, he's cruising down the highway, his fucking foot's all the way down to the metal, maybe the dog's in the back yipping, and he's just fucking going, and they have the craft is going, woo, 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 it's going all over the place. It's going all over the place. And they get to Indian Head, which is this big fucking mountain that it's got a fucking face in it, and they cruise around the corner and boom, there it fucking is. Standing about 90 feet in front of them, not standing, I guess hovering, was this massive 60 to 80 feet fucking in diameter, just this big saucer, and it had these rectangular windows along the side. Barney, he'd get out and be like, what the fuck is that? And he'd pull out those binoculars and he'd look, fucking terrified already, and he'd look and he'd see the humanoid figure standing in these windows, and there'd be something in his nuts that says, fuck, it's Nazis! And they'd get in the car and they'd fucking haul off into the fucking moon, and they're driving as fast as possible. They're trying to get the fuck out of there. And the fucking craft is zipping all around them. It's going in front of them, it's going behind them, and it starts doing this rhythmic buzzing tone. Just fucking crazy shit is going on, and they're fucking going as fast as possible, and it all becomes a blur because they're going so fast. And then eventually they'd get home. Everything was deep behind them. But when they checked their watch as they're pulling into town, they realized that the sun is high in the sky. And they're like, we should have made it here at like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And suddenly, it's already like 6 and 7. Like, what the fuck is going on? But they really think nothing of it. You know, they just kind of brush it to the wayside. Like, who fucking cares? Never minding the fact that Betty's dress was just ripped. And she had this pink powder shit all over. Like on her wrists and shit. Like, it was just strange. And Barney had these deep cuts. I don't know how to say it. Fucking just impressions on the top of his leather shoes. Emblematic as if he was dragged. And Delcy was a neurotic fuck. She's freaking out. She's like, and if Betty and Barney Hill could understand what that dog was saying, and it's yipping and it's barking, you all were all fucking abducted by aliens! Ooh, you let it go. So there's roughly 2 hours of their memory that is missing. They have no idea what happened, why they're coming back into town with all this series of things. And really, like I said, they really wouldn't think anything of it until Betty started having these reoccurring nightmares of these figures basically just molesting her and hearing these distant screams and just all of this cacophony of horror happening. And they're happening every single night. And it starts to freak Barney out a little bit, and his health is declining because he has so much anxiety, because he's freaking out because he doesn't know what happened to him for 2 hours of his life, and it's just sitting in his brain. He's like, what the fuck is going on? So they reached out to a psychologist to see if they could get help, and the psychologist said, I got a friend. He'll take you and he'll hypnotize you. He'll put you in a deep memory state, and we're gonna figure out what the fuck happened to you, because it is inside of your brain. We just gotta find it. Through multiple sessions, we get a nice, fluffy, cloudy narrative.
And I walk out, and I walk across the road. There it is up there. Oh, God damn it! Calm down. Why doesn't it go away? Look at it. It doesn't matter. Calm. It's not gonna hurt you.
Eventually, what would happen is while Barney is driving, he would be urged. Something within him would say, "Hey, turn off here. There's a good brothel over here. So just turn off. You'll be okay. You're not gonna get hurt. Just to turn off." So he would turn off onto a dirt road, and he's like, "Why the fuck is this going on?" And they'd follow this dirt road until they reached a roadblock. They would see the saucer again, and all of these figures standing in front of it. They would urge, and he'd get out and be like, "I got a gun!" And they'd say, "Hey, put that shit away. I don't care." And they would come up and they would grab them. And Betty would remark that they were surprisingly strong. Like, they were these tiny little, 4 to 5 foot creatures. And Betty was 5 foot tall. And Barney was a decent 5'7". So they weren't fairly tall people. But the short thing, they'd grab them with remarkable strength and just lift them with ease and take them into the ship. They would be separated into their own individual examination rooms, where the leader, who was fluent in English, but they never really saw them talk. There would be a gaping mouth, and they could understand the words that were coming out somehow, some way. Betty's experience is remarkably tame. They just kind of poke and prod at her. They try to take her dress off, and they have no fucking idea how a zipper works. So they end up ripping it off. And wherever they grab her, there's the weird pink residue, which would later on start to tarnish it. It would allow the dress would start to disintegrate where that pink powder bullshit was. It just ruined the nicety of the dress. Oh, my lovely Sunday dress is now ruined. Oh, fuck. But apparently they also did a pregnancy test for some fucking reason. But then you get Barney's side of the story, and it sounds like he got raped by a mule train. In my head, I got this idea that the aliens had to have sexual organs that were very similar to human females, because they probably looked at Betty and they're like, "Oh yeah, we got one of those. That's new." But then they get Barney over here with this King Kong ding dong, and they fucking pull that shit out, and they're like, "What the fuck is this?" And they're holding it up to their arm, and they're fucking, "Oh, let me take a picture with this motherfucker." They're honestly fucking perturbed. So they fucking take this machine and they stick that machine up right against his penis, and they suck out his nut juice. After the event, Barney would notice that there was this circle of warts right around his genitals, and he'd go to a doctor and be like, "Doctor, what the fuck?" And the doctor would take a look, and they were purely cosmetic. So it wasn't like it was a fucking disease or anything. It was just like, "Oh yeah, I just got some warts." And Barney would be like, "Please get this shit off me." And the doctor was like, "Why? Why would I do that? It's just, there's nothing wrong with them. It's not hurting you." And he's like, "Yeah, but they're fucking gross to look at. Please take these warts off my penis." But for some reason, Betty would get more information than Barney. The leader would show Betty a star map, and it would show where their home planet was, and basically this trade route had all these lines and blah blah blah, and the directions in which they're going. A lot of interesting information, I guess. But as they guided them back to their car after the examination happened, they said, "Hey, just so you know, you're not gonna remember any of this shit, so fucking smell you later, dogs." After the event, some of these just strange happenings would happen. Like one day they would come home after one of the hypnosis treatments or whatever, and there'd just be a fucking pile of leaves on their counter. Like it was the worst burglar, just was like, "Hey, I'm gonna..." And on top of that pile of leaves, there'd be a little piece of jewelry that Betty had lost at the night of the UFO encounter, not realizing that she had lost it until now. Oh man, who knew? But as far as we know, that's basically what happened on September 19th and September 20th of 1961. Isn't that very interesting?
In the course of an average life, we spend between 20 and 25 years asleep. But scientists don't know why. As scientists develop the ability to look inside the sleeping brain, they may be on the brink of a remarkable discovery. It may be that the most important function of sleep is to allow us to dream.
Now, based on the star map that was implanted in Betty's brain, they were able to, through hypnotic recollection, they were able to get her to draw it, and some other person was like, let me make a recreation of this with beads and string, like a little art craft project. And they would make a diagram and they'd realize, oh shit, this is the Zeta Reticulans system. And these planets that are their home planets is apparently Zeta Reticula 1 or 2. I don't know which one it was. Fucking sue me. The scientists have named planets Zeta Reticula 1 and Zeta Reticula 2 because they're close to each other. How fucking unique, how fucking individualistic, how original can you possibly be? But it is believed that these aliens were Zeta Reticulans. Now they're your standard little 4-foot gray aliens, big head, big eyes, little lips, blah blah blah. And eventually Betty would get in correspondence with a scientist that would be able to evolutionarily explain why the aliens were the way that they are. The big head, it means they have highly developed brains that they could communicate with whatever, blah blah blah. I don't know. They just have highly developed brains. That's all it is. The small mouth and the small jaw means that they probably had a liquid diet. The big chest meant that they could extract a lot of oxygen from the environment. That's why I got a big boy chest. But the small bodies is the small bodies are emblematic that maybe they came from a planet that had a heavy dose of gravity, and because of this they were also super strong like Superman. And strangely enough, the only other event that the Zeta Reticulans are involved with is the Roswell crash in 1947. You think with all of the alien abduction bullshit going on, we would have like a long list of Zeta Reticulan interactions, but not really. But maybe it's just because we just don't fucking know. Maybe it was just stupid. Oh, and let it go. So basically, the story would spread like wildfire. They'd get books, they'd get fucking TV interviews, they'd make a made-for-TV movie starring James Earl Jones. This shit, it just grew. It just became bigger than you could possibly imagine. Eventually, they would urge Betty to try and reestablish contact. They'd say, hey, we all want to get together. We're gonna have a big old festival out in the middle of the fucking, in your parents' farm. And what you're gonna do to let them know that we want to see them is you're gonna stand on your back porch and you're gonna scream at the top of your lungs the same fucking thing over and over and over again up until, for fucking months leading up until the night of what will be known as Skywatch 1967. Today is Friday, June 2nd, the 153rd day of the year. In 8 more days, go to my parents' farm in Kingston, New Hampshire. Best science men are there. Come close to science men. All is safe. They say that at some point because of her fucking chain smoking that she would get a raspy ass voice. But maybe she fucking damaged her vocal cords from screaming at the top of her lungs for months on end. And to no surprise, nothing came from this. Eventually, Betty's parents would experience some sort of UFO sounds, encounter some sort of bullshit. Basically, they were sleeping and they just heard a Krakatoa, from outside. And then, whoo, and just all this noise and the shaking of the house and bullshit. But the only real evidence to come out of it was this small little piece of burnt bark that would come out to be planted there. It was a hoax made by the friendly neighborhood rascal. And UFO enthusiasts, they would gravitate towards Betty for a very long time, throughout her life. Sadly, Barney would kick the bucket fairly early in his 50s just due to, a myriad of health problems. And not to mention that their little family dog, Delcy, 2 months before Barney's death, would also pass away. And this, I think, it severely fucked Betty up. I think her whole life just kind of fucking just got flipped table and she was just fucking, what do I do do anymore. What do I do? So she decided to purchase a camera, and she'd just start filming everything and saying, look, it's UFOs. You know, it's like there'd be a plane flying in the sky and be like, oh my God, it's a UFO. And the person that urged them to go see a hypnotist said, hey, Betty, like you gotta be careful. You know, if you keep doing these crazy and wild claims, everybody's gonna think that you're fucking nuts, and suddenly they're gonna strawman argument the fuck out of the fact that you actually were abducted by aliens, and it's just gonna ruin your credibility. You don't want to do that. And she said, fuck you. I don't care. I don't care if I ruin my credibility. I don't give a shit. So she'd take UFO enthusiasts and skeptics and take them all on road trips and prove that aliens were real. And none of them really ever came back with any conclusive evidence, and it was really just a means to fucking get a hand job. I don't know. And it's funny because even later in life, she would criticize enthusiasts for being, you know, too paranoid to, you know, for not looking at the evidence, for not, you know, taking caution in their claims. She would criticize these people for doing the exact same thing that she did. Now, I don't know if this is just inconsistencies with the book, within the book or whatever, but it sounded stupid. It sounded stupid for like within a chapter of each other, just being like, yeah, she was being super crazy and filming everything and calling weather balloons aliens, to, man, look at all these fucking idiots calling weather balloons aliens. Why would they do that? Why would they be so stupid? And Betty would soon become sick herself. She would lose limbs and just basically just fall apart. As age and chain smoking does to you. She was staying with her sister or somebody. She was staying with a family member of some sort, and she was staying on the couch, and she wouldn't be able to leave the couch because there was something off, and the cat was being fucking weird. Everything was weird, and suddenly Betty wasn't in this failing health anymore. She was like, you know, chipper and cheery, and, you know, just the person that she used to be, and then like a few days later after that, she died. So there's belief that she had been revisited by these aliens, but it could also purely just be that, like, in the last final, you know, dying throes, a lot of the times in illness and bullshit, it always there's a little bit of bereavement. There's a little bit of relaxation and like, oh man, things aren't nearly as bad as they were, and then you die. And that's just kind of how it happens. You know, a lot of the times when it comes to death, it's just kind of, it really becomes an acceptance. Like, once you give up mentally, once you say, you know, I'm done doing this, your body just kind of does it for you. They're like, oh yeah, we're done? Okay, we're dead. And if there was ever a way for me to die, it'd be that way. To just sail off into the ocean blue and say, hey, you know what? My time here is done. I'm happy for the time that I had. I don't want to die in a sea of regret. Kind of like Boromir. Boromir's death is like one of the worst ways to die ever. They can rule the world. Now, all of the criticisms of this event is filled with all of the shit that you've heard before, from weather balloons to light refractions from Jupiter, which honestly is the worst excuse I've ever heard from anything ever. But from government technology testing to harassment from your local racists, it's all here. All of the excuses are present. And really, like, the strongest bit of evidence that they kind of take from this are you can't disprove these sessions of hypnotherapy. You can't disprove that shit. And also the star map. How would you be able to come up with the star map? And all I'm gonna say, the only bit of opinion that I'll get here is they've crafted one hell of a story. And who's to say in this little weekend excursion that they didn't decide to just live it up and squirt 9 doses of acid into their eyeballs? There's like fucking a million different gray species of aliens. There's the tall grays, there's the short grays, there's the wide grays, there's the circle grays. There's a lot of species of aliens that are documented, that are put out into the world. So when the Aryans, and that's what it's believed to say, that is belief that the Aryans, which I know that's the fucking Hitler's, you know, fucking white race of tall blonde hair, blue eyes. It's belief that Hitler was fascinated with these aliens, these tall, beautiful, you know, pale skin, you know, flowing silver hair. That's who the Aryans were. It was a species of aliens that he was wanting to emulate, that he believed were, you know, would ascend us to their level of godliness. And when the Aryans are saying, hey, beware the Greys, it's very ambiguous, because there's also these small little gray aliens that exist, known as Archons. You're not supposed to say their name, because if you say their name, you give them power, and they get in your brain and they munch on it, and suddenly you're fucking stupid. But it is believed that humans used to be an evolved species, that we had telekinetic powers, and we were mighty lords, like thus of Dark Souls. We were like Lord Gwyn. We had this wonderful power, and we could control and shape our universe to our own will. But the Archons were little shits. Little ankle biters were little shits, and they said, hey, I'll be your best friend, and if you let me be, if you let me inside your brain, I'll only amplify your power for you. And we were like, okay. And the Archons bore their way into our brains, and they munched on our little power, and it devolved us, and it turned us into the fucking moronic species that we are now. And all of these other aliens are trying to help us to evolve to that next level again. They said, hey, please just be peaceful with one another, get rid of your nuclear weapons, and we'll bring you back to where you once were. And us as humans who are greedy with war and money we're fucking stupid, and we refuse to do that because we cannot look past the fucking 100-year existence that we walk upon this earth. We have no perspective for the bigger picture, and it's fucking stupid. As far as I know, as far as I am concerned, that is the story of Betty and Barney Hell. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you had fun, and I believe that it is time for me to say, stay the fuck out of apartment 213.
Mount Everest ain't got shit on me. Mount Everest ain't got shit on me. 'Cause I'm on top of the world. I'm on top of the world. Yeah.
What enough? What? Oh! I know this one. Back to J-Bust. I got the question. How are you so good at giving help? And why do you care so much? Here's the secret. I don't give a shit if you ruin your life, fall into meth, and fucking kill yourself. I don't give a shit. Which makes me the perfect human to give you advice. Because if you hit rock bottom, it doesn't affect me. I'm just looking out for your best interests. Aha!